The great discovery in the 20th century, carrying into our time, is that the universe assembles itself. So that's the news we're working with. The universe is involved with self-assembly, self-organization, and it's gone through a number of amazing moments. All of these moments are what I'm referring to collectively as emergence. So you can use the word emergence, you can say creative emergence, or even creativity. But it's principally talking about those great moments, the great birth moments. The first would be the universe itself coming forth, some 13 billion years ago. Then you have this flaring forth. It's also called the primeval fireball. Then you have this great moment of the first atoms are formed. To kind of get into the fact that there were no atoms, then there were atoms. Then you have another huge moment when the stars and the galaxies came forth. Point here is that it's radical. There's no galaxy, then there's a galaxy. Then within the galaxies themselves, you have the birth of planets, at least one of which becomes alive. And so these are the huge moments: the birth of the universe, the atoms, the galaxies, stars, the planets, one that's alive. And then on this one particular planet, we have a series of breakthroughs where you have advanced life showing up, all these different eras. And so here we are. We come into this story right in the middle of this great event, this self-assembling event. And we happen to come in at the time when the Earth is in the midst of its own moment of emergence. In particular, we arrive here at the moment when a geological era is closing down and a new one is opening up. The geological era is called by scientists the Cenozoic era. 65 million years, it's coming to an end, largely because of our activities. But that means simultaneously we are part of the birth of a new era, having different names. We don't really know what to call the new era. Thomas Berry, the cultural historian, uses the phrase ecozoic. And that's one of the ways we'll refer to this. We're in the moment of the birth of the ecozoic. So we're examining the way in which we can participate in this awakening of the Earth. But I want to begin by emphasizing that it's an activity that's involving the entire Earth. It's not something that humans are in charge of. We are part of a process that goes back to the beginning of time. What does it mean to be part of the birth of a new geological era? That's the question. How can we participate in that more effectively, especially around this question of emergence? The way I like to think about it is that the reason the Cenozoic era came to the end is because humanity developed so much power, it became a geological force. So now we have a presence on the planet that is at parity with the atmosphere. So the dynamics of the atmosphere are now in partnership with the presence of the human. And likewise, the oceans, the biosphere, these are all now dancing with the human as a partner. This never happened before. So this is a new moment. So it is, if you start to think about our presence on the planet as a geological presence, or you can even say this: the human species with its infrastructure amounts to a geological formation. Then the question is, how do we participate in that geological formation in a way that is mutually enhancing? That's our question. It's happening now. It's happening everywhere. There's this change taking place. It's very chaotic. It's haphazard. We're trying to get some kind of sense as to what's going on. A simple way to think about this is that the human endeavor has been powered by these non-renewable energy sources, and that's coming to an end. Who knows when? Maybe it'll be in 30 years. There are different estimates. It's hard to know exactly when. No one has any confidence that it'd last another 100 years. Yeah, maybe 6 months away. We don't know. But we're in a time when the source of our civilization is drying up. You see, everything is determined by petroleum. It's our transportation for sure, but our clothes, the way in which we build our buildings, our housing, all of that is about to be unplugged. We all know this, but we sort of hope that we can avoid it somehow and get around it. I'm just saying, let's take it for granted that this is taking place, right? That this is coming to an end. Then that means that then our task as a planet and as a species, our task is to reinvent the major forms of the human presence. And what would they be? They would be our form of agriculture, our form of economics. So our presence on the planet as these economic beings, our form of education. All of these major institutional systems, our form of building, architecture, all of them are in the midst of this transformation. And I'm trying to think about it geologically with you. My guess is that, and others for sure, that this question of how to participate in this reinvention of the human at the level of civilization and species, this will occupy the most creative minds over the next couple centuries. It's not going to take place in the next week or next month. It's going to require a deep rethinking. Even to think in terms of the cities themselves, how to construct a city that actually is mutually enhancing, that grows up out of the earth, the way a mountain will grow up or a hillside. It grows up and it actually enhances the presence. Its presence is an enhancement for the other species, the other forms of life. Never thought about that, not really, because the cities have been such a recent invention. They've only been here for a few millennia. So it's at the level of creating what might be an ecological city, or some people call it an eco-city. It's major change at the surface of the earth. Likewise in education. The whole endeavor of education has been designed to power the industrial civilization, but that's ending. So what's the form of education going to be like? So to give birth to that is what I'm using the phrase emergence for. So it's to participate in a radical emergence, a form of education that never existed before. It will have similarities with other forms in the past, for sure, similarities. But we've never had this challenge of creating this kind of educational system. Likewise, religion. The great religions of the planet will probably endure for maybe forever, I don't know, but they will certainly endure for a while. But they were created under different conditions and for different reasons. We have a different kind of challenge before us. So all of this has to be considered the primary activity for humans that are drawn into this power of emergence. The question then is this: how can we become a space where creative emergence can operate through conscious self-awareness? I mean, creativity has been operating all the way through. Now it's just a question is how is it going to operate within the human in a way that addresses the major challenges of our time. So that's our focus. It's a single energy that begins 13.7 billion years ago and sweeps through to our moment. It's a single energy. It's one single process. It's multiform, multi-level, complex, but it's one process. So when we talk about the moments of creative emergence in the past, we're talking about the energy that we are in the present as well. This understanding of the universe is fresh. Humans didn't have this understanding of creativity billions of years ago. This is what the whole modern scientific endeavor has given to the human species as a way of reflecting on our moment. We didn't know about the way in which this power of emergence operated. We didn't. And so our understanding of ourselves and how to organize ourselves was based on a different set of knowledge. Here we have this. So my approach right now is to do this, is to look at 4 epochal moments of emergence, to examine them. And really this is, like I say, it's something the humans haven't had the opportunity over 130,000 years of our existence. We haven't had the opportunity to reflect on these moments of emergence. But now we want to examine them and ask this question. By looking at the dynamics of emergence in previous moments, how would those dynamics appear within human experience now? The power of emergence, how does that show up in the nature of the human psyche now, in the nature of human experience now? I just have 4 moments. Here's the first. The first is the emergence of carbon. Hard to pick a more important atom. Carbon is the basis of all life. And it has a very particular moment of emergence. And it takes place in the center of a star. It goes like this. You have a star being created out of hydrogen and helium early in the universe. And then what takes place is the pressure in the center of the star enables the hydrogen to actually fuse and become helium. In that release of energy, the star burns brightly. But it burns only until it uses up its hydrogen fuel. When it gets to the point of having burnt or fused all of the hydrogen, at that point the star can no longer hold off its natural gravitational pressure. So the star then starts to implode. As it implodes and the atoms are crashing against each other, the temperature in the center soars up. And it soars up so high that you get to a place where now the helium fuses. Just to give you a couple numbers, you have a star the size of our sun. The center is around 10 million degrees. As the star uses up its hydrogen, it collapses down and the center soars off to 100 million degrees. But at 100 million degrees, the helium nuclei can fuse together into carbon. Carbon has 6 protons and 6 neutrons. It doesn't exist in the universe until this moment, early on, when one first star, invented carbon. The fascinating thing here to notice is that the universe arrives at domains of emergence. Until this moment, there was no way in the universe for carbon to appear. Not possible. I mean, just there's no fountain of carbon until you get to a star of this size and magnitude. But when this shows up, then suddenly carbon is flooding into the universe by the trillions a second. One way to understand this process of emergence, then, is to say that the universe is always seeking a new domain of emergence. Now, why is it doing this? Then you move into speculation and so forth, and I'm not even beginning to answer that. I'm just saying the one way to think about the universe is it's seeking new domains of emergence. Now, in reflecting on this, the same power then at work in the star now is in the form of humans and other beings. How would this show up? What qualities of mind? An easy one would be this. It would show up in humans who have a love of extremes. Well, a kind of an inclination to move towards extreme states. And I would even say this, that there's even a kind of faith that such a human has, a faith in the possibility of a nearby domain of emergence. There's one of the interesting things here is that it's so unlikely that suddenly you'd have carbon showing up. I mean, scientists marvel over this endlessly. have 3 helium nuclei collide at the same time and create carbon. It's just almost impossible. But the universe, is organized so that this happens in these extreme states. So there's a kind of a sense that what seems impossible still may come forth. One way I like to think of it is this: it's a feeling within humans that their imagination is central but limited. So that there's a way in which, we're able to imagine so much and so powerfully and so important, but there's a way in which the universe even transcends what we're able to imagine and surprise us even beyond what we think possible. I don't even mean what's rational. I mean there's a possibility nearby. This is what I'm saying, this quality that shows up in the human. There's a possibility nearby that there's a domain of emergence that goes beyond even what we can imagine. So I call this a kind of faith. It's like a cosmic faith, if you like, or a faith in life. And maybe just to go back to the idea that this shows up in humans at like extremes, I also think that it shows up in the human conviction that in extreme states of mind and heart, there are openings and there are the possibilities for emergence that can't really show up elsewhere. There is a kind of intuition we have that even in the most horrendous experiences, that suffering that just seems beyond imagination, that there is in that experience itself a deep activation of creativity. At least this would be a way to think about the form of emergence, creative emergence in the human. And so that's what I mean, like it's a love of extremes, because there's this sense of possibility that lingers somehow in extreme states. Second example of creative emergence, would be actually the birth of the planet Earth itself. And this I want to compare just quickly to other planetary systems. For instance, other planets. We have Earth, we have Mars, we have Jupiter. And all of them come forth around 4.5 billion years ago. They're all part of this creative emergent event, the birth of the solar system. But here's the amazing thing. There's a subtle difference. The subtle difference has to do with the dynamics of electromagnetism and gravity. But the subtle difference amounts to this. In a planet like Jupiter, it remains in a gaseous state. If you go to a planet smaller than Earth, like a planet like Mars, it gets tighter and tighter and then freezes up. And then you have Earth, which is in between the two. If you go all the way to Mercury, it's even smaller than Mars, so it freezes up even more quickly than Mars does. So you have in this amazing being, Earth, you're in between the extremes now. And what happens there is that the surface will tighten up into rocks and so forth, but in the core there's movement. There is the movement of the magma. So you have these convection cells. They're moving, moving, moving. The movement comes from the heat that's generated in the center of the Earth. The heat in the center of the Earth comes from the radioactive elements that were given to the Earth from the star that gave birth to all of our elements. So it's the radioactivity that comes from the star that generates the motion of the Earth. But because the Earth can continue to move like this, it can be involved in this long creative emergence of our 4.5 billion year history. So the mountains come forth, the oceans come forth, life comes forth, precisely because the Earth is in this stage of in between. The two extremes would be rigidity on the one hand of say like Mars now, but certainly Mercury for a long time, and a dissipation or a complete chaos of Jupiter. It is not easy to think of the human as a geological formation, but if you just sort of calm down a minute and think of the Earth moving, you see the Earth is because of those convection cycles, because of those cycles, that you have the mountains form on the planet, the surface. And because of that movement, we have this chemical activity we're talking about. And then we have the birth of life, the first living cells. I mean, I don't think there's a greater mystery in the universe. There's not a greater mystery in the universe that you have a planet that's churning with magma, and out of that, life emerges. So it is the way in which the universe is committed to self-transcendence. And that may be a word that has all kinds of connotations I don't want to include, but I simply mean this, that in the order of the Earth, of the early Earth, there is no life. There's this movement of magma and so forth, and yet coming out of that is life. So that it is, again, it's the universe seeking a new domain of emergence and finding it with the planet Earth. So that what could never be elsewhere, in between the galaxies and so forth, could suddenly appear on this planet. It's the kind of, I say self-transcendence. It's an order that is seeking to surpass itself. That's the nature of creative emergence. It's an order that just naturally seeks to even go beyond what it has arrived at. Sometimes I think, just think about it. At this point, you have the birth of the universe. That's pretty impressive. And then you have these stars and galaxies showing up by the 100 billion. Okay. That's great. And then suddenly you have stars blowing up and then reconfiguring and forming new stars. What a display. I want to go, okay, that's enough. You've just done it. Okay, fine. But it's like nothing is enough for the universe. No matter how fantastic it is, there's still that drive or mysterious impulse to transcend the order that exists. So given the universe is like that in terms of the birth of the Earth, these qualities then would show up in the human as one would be a love of turbulence, and a love of a balanced turbulence. It's not total turbulence like Jupiter, but it's not rigidity and fixation. It's just that life in between, where things are turbulent but somehow mysteriously ordered and balanced. There's a way some humans reside there with great happiness. And this would be the power of emergence in the form of a human. Here's another, though, and this relates to this notion of the universe wanting to go beyond itself. There is in humans this sense of something more. It's bizarre to think about it. Where'd you get the idea of something more? Even to keep track of what's here is a full-time job, and then have that idea of something more. But it's the universe insists upon something more, and we feel it, and so we have that we orient ourselves, our lives around this question of something more. It becomes the central meaning of our lives often. And I'm just saying that this is the way in which the power of emergence appears in the form of a human. The third epical moment of emergence I would like to introduce so we can think about what it means to be the human form of emergence is the moment when the eukaryotes appeared. There's no way around the word eukaryote. There's no way around it. At the level of life, after the birth of life, this was the most creative moment in the whole history of life. And it's called the emergence of the eukaryote. It means a cell with a nucleus. Before that, the cells had no nucleus. And so it's just amazing moment, and scientists have been reflecting on this like forever, and it's just, here's how the story goes. Life needed hydrogen. It found a way to get hydrogen from water. Water is made of hydrogen and oxygen. Life pulled off the hydrogen, used the hydrogen, and released the oxygen. Seems like a good idea. But what happened is that oxygen is a very powerful element, and as it built up in the atmosphere, it became a very difficult presence for life. It just became so powerful that if life were around the oxygen would actually dive into the cells and even tear them apart. You have a major challenge on your hand because the atmosphere is filling up with oxygen from life itself. And an amazing moment takes place. The cells found a way actually to engage with the oxygen. And in that complex process, they not only found a way to engage oxygen, they also lived inside one another. So the cells that could deal with the oxygen became part of larger cells, leading to this new complex called a eukaryotic cell, where it's like having one cell inside of another cell. Now, maybe it'll take 10 million years of thought to really unravel that complex story. It's really complicated, for sure. What I'm trying to emphasize right here is this. Think of the period in between the moment when oxygen became difficult and the eukaryote figured out how to deal with it. That moment, who knows how long that was? It was a long period. But in that period, life did not know how to proceed. There was just a long period of suffering for sure, but deep, 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 deep ignorance. I mean, just no one knew what to do. And this is one of the great insights of Darwinian evolutionary biology, is that there's no inherent plan that's sort of working out the way you'd work out an engineer's plan and build a building. There's nothing like that. The power of creative emergence involves groping, involves wandering around, it involves profound confusion. And I mean, I don't know how long that, I don't think anybody knows how long that period was, but let's just say it was a period of 10 million years, right? 10 million years of living with ambiguity. And so this would be the quality I'm trying to heighten, is that the creative emergence loves ambiguity and even ambivalence. But it's the ability just to embrace the situation and not have a clear idea of how to move forward. You don't. One clear idea is not good enough. You need millions and millions of ideas. Try them out and see which one finally takes off. That's the nature of creative emergence. At this point right here, I think it might be helpful to encourage you in terms of this task of trying to think through creative emergence by reminding ourselves that up until our time, we have not been thinking about creativity in terms of the universe as a whole. It's an amazing fact that the word creativity was never used to refer to the universe until the 20th century. Certainly Europeans, but modern people in general, did not regard the universe as creative. That is the news of the fact that the universe is a time developmental 13.7 billion year emergent series of events That's the news. We regarded the universe as just there. And so, creativity, the word creativity referred to what humans did. The basic idea was that the humans were creative, and there's a backdrop called the universe or nature. And that made sense within that worldview, but we've blasted beyond that. So one of the inadequacies of our reflection on creativity is that we're using the human experience and the human brain, and especially human hands. See, when we make something, right, we're creating something, that's unusual in the history of the universe. The point is, most of the creativity in the universe took place without hands and without brains. I mean, you just have to take that in. Without brains, without hands, and yet all of our reflection on creativity was taken as granted that creativity had to do with hands and brains. So it's trying to get in touch with a deeper, more primordial creativity. That's the challenge. By the way, this is why creativity is not a fundamental category in either the history of philosophy or the history of religion. I can give you all kinds of categories that were fundamental in philosophy and religion around the planet, not creativity, because we didn't really grasp. How can we talk about what was taking place 1.5 billion years ago? I mean, there's no evidence or data or any kind of insight into all of that. All of that's come forth now. So, thinking about this, I'm trying to encourage you, because it is all of this is like fresh area for reflection. I'm just giving you my best shot, but to really think through what it means to be creativity in the form of the human is going to occupy a lot of us for quite a while. So just to complete this part on thinking about the human from the point of view of the emergence of the eukaryote, I just wanted to highlight the sense of living with ambiguity. And I want to say one more thing, that creativity has to do with the resolution of tension. And look at the universe as a whole. The tension that was alive with the birth of the eukaryote was the oxygen that was creating this enormously difficult situation. The way to talk about it in chemical terms is that there was all kinds of potential energy being pumped into the atmosphere in the form of oxygen. And it created this enormous gradient of energy. And in that gap, in that gradient, is where the creativity took place at the level of the cells. They found a way to bring this intensity into the form of life. So it resolved a very difficult situation by enhancing life. And I think that is also is how creativity shows up in the human. There is a natural inclination for the resolution of tension. And the resolution of tension is creativity in this sense, because what new ideas, what forms, what insights, what institutions must we create to reduce and resolve the tensions that are tearing apart so many parts of our planet now? My last example of an epical moment of emergence is actually earlier than these others. I just wanted to end with this by going back in time to when the first stars were forming, and even the first galaxies. It's an amazing moment. You have, I talked about this briefly, but I'm going back to it with a different emphasis. Just imagine the universe expanding in all directions. It's just expanding out. So if you are two little atoms here, you're expanding away from all the other atoms. Then this amazing moment comes when this whole vast uniform expansion breaks apart into these clouds. The clouds become the galaxies, which we talked about. But here's the amazing thing. The clouds themselves have to pull themselves out of the parent system. They have to pull themselves out of the expansion itself. So here's another little atom. I'm an atom. Here's another atom. And we're expanding away like all the rest. Everything's good. But then all of a sudden, I have a new idea. I'm going to get more intensely involved with this atom. And this attraction here is going to, and I get involved with this other atom, is going to overcome the pressure between us that wants us to continue expanding. Just because of the allurement between us. And of course, with this, the rest throughout the cloud. But here, so the great moment is the cloud pulls itself out of the parent system and then releases itself into its own creativity. That's what's so amazing. It couldn't form a galaxy until it pulled itself out of the larger system. And then suddenly, whoa, new possibilities emerge. So the sense of pulling oneself out of an engulfing system, how does that show up in the human? One would be this. It's a fixation on one's creative path. And the use of the word fixation is usually what you hear from people who are outside looking at you. All right? In other words, there's a dimming down or even elimination of social bonds, even familial bonds, in order to get to the creative work that is upon one. And so that in other words, where creative emergence shows up most powerfully with humans are the ones that are given to that, have an inclination for that, don't make apologies about it. They, like the cloud, have an understanding of the essential nature of this. It's even more important than the larger parent system. So one is pulled into a release of the intrinsic creative genius of the individual. And related idea is this: an extravagant devotion to the forms that are drawing all of one's energy. It's not just that you decide to be part of a creative endeavor. It's also that one way to think about it is that a larger entity, idea, movement, a larger entity is sucking all of your energies into it. And there's a release of one's energy into serving this larger creative impulse. All right. We are considering the ways in which the human is entering into another phase of its adventure by enabling the powers of the universe to operate, to proceed in conscious self-awareness. And another way to say that is that the powers of the universe, each of them is a role for the human. Each of them provides an overall role for the human species. And our question then is, how can we become more aligned with this particular role? How can we actually consciously amplify this process that's already taking place? So creativity is sweeping through the whole universe. My simple question is this: how can we participate consciously in assisting or amplifying or accelerating that process? So I have what I'm just calling 4 suggestions for assisting in this movement. 4 suggestions for deepening this spiritual path called emergence. So in this particular focus. Here's the first one. The first one is to begin with the assumption that creativity engulfs the universe. It's an easy assumption to make now that we know about the whole universe. But you begin with the assumption that creativity engulfs the universe and each of us. It's not a question of becoming creative exactly. Not exactly that. It's rather a question of enabling the creativity that's already suffusing us to proceed more effectively. If we begin with the idea that we are engulfed with creativity, and that we realize that our roots of our beings go back to the beginning of time. We are rooted in the very fireball, because with the same energy from that moment is coursing through us. We are this creativity in this new form. And here's the amazing thing. The creativity actually knows what it's about, right? The creativity knew at one time it was time to build galaxies. There wasn't a moment before, and it wasn't the moment afterwards. This is unbelievable. It's not just that it has all this power. There's also some kind of rhythm or timing or order that it knows when its moment is, when the domain of emergence has appeared. And suddenly it was the moment for galaxies, and the universe set to galaxies. We're the same energy. And so we also intuitively know, actually, what our creativity is. I'm suggesting this as a consequence of beginning with the assumption that we are engulfed in creativity. And I think that actually we have certain moments when it becomes really clear what our creative project is and what our area of creativity is. For instance, a brush with death. There are moments when you realize my time could have been over. And then there's a sense of like, what really matters? And then in that moment, we really do know kind of what it's all about. Another way for it to appear, one of my favorites, is through envy. Because we don't all envy the same types. But to see in terms of envy, because there's a sense that your creativity knows that actually is what you are to be involved with. That's who you are. And then the flip side is admiration. The ones that we're most powerful to. Just we realize that really is what would make life worthwhile. That particular. So envy and admiration. But the sense of realizing amazingly that the universe actually knows what it's doing. And so intuitively we do know what we're doing. And so the task of enabling that to happen, and the great thing is here, is by the elimination of obstacles. So as the alignment takes place, the creative emergence takes place. Here's a second suggestion. Forget about pleasing everyone. Just forget about pleasing everyone. Forget about pleasing everyone. You know, and this can be parents, it can be society, it can be all sorts of figures within us. It's not going to happen. Not if you are a space in the universe for creative emergence. It's not going to happen. See, pleasing everyone is an equilibrium state. Things are nice and pleasant there. And sometimes it's really important to please everyone, but not in terms of creativity. Because with creativity, it happens. Here's the phrase from science. Far from equilibrium. The Earth is far from equilibrium. That's what I was talking about in terms of the heat in the Earth. Mercury is closer to equilibrium. It freezes up. But we are held away from equilibrium by the energy we got from the star that blew up and gave us all this energy. We're held away. And because of that, things churn, things happen. And that's where it all happens. That's why there's a love of chaos as well for creative emergence, because you've got to be far from equilibrium. And in chaos, things can happen. In rigidity and fixation, you just don't waste your time. It's set. It's going to continue that way. So it's also a kind of it releases one into a recognition that what you're giving birth to as yourself and your work is going to be upsetting of equilibrium, the established order. It goes along with it. This goes into the third suggestion. The third suggestion is related to the second, but it's a little bit different. The third is the simple fact that for emergence to take place, order has got to be destroyed. The classic example of this is the birth and the rise of the mammals. This took place 65 million years ago when the world of the dinosaur was broken apart by an asteroid. I mean, it's just worth thinking about. If the asteroid hadn't hit the Earth and the dinosaurs were allowed to persist, we would still be 5 inches long, scurrying around the forest floor. I mean, the mammals were there, right? But they were little shrews and things like that. I mean, I'm not against little shrews, but my point is, there's no way we would have emerged without the destruction of order. I'm not justifying the destruction because we're here. I'm saying this happens over and over and over again. Emergence requires a softening and even the destruction of the order of the previous era. So, to become involved with creative emergence as a human means you are necessarily going to be disturbing to the centers of power of your time. That goes along with it. There's no way around it. And the more deeply one is in touch with the creative emergence of the planet, the more disturbing you will be. And there's only so much we can deal with, but I'm just saying to go into it with an idea of somehow avoiding upsetting people, not going to happen. Because the most intelligent of the humans that are holding together right now the modern industrial system, the most intelligent of them are the ones that are going to be most sensitive to the threat that comes from this radical new idea. This radical new idea that we are here to participate in a mutually enhancing community. That's what we're here for. Involving all of the humans and all the different species. That's the radical new idea. As opposed to the power games of getting one group on top of the others and fighting off all the rest. Huge. And to break away from all that economic structure that's involved with oil and so forth. So it is it's an embrace of the opposition, not as somehow other, but just as part of the retarded nature of the universe. Just have to accept it. That the universe is never happy with where it's gotten to. It wants to go to a new level. And so there are powers that are going to be directed against creative emergence. And we will talk about that in the fourth power in particular, but I just wanted to emphasize it here. I go into this question of how creative emergence will involve disturbing the world because I just want to emphasize how important it is to find support for your work in the world. Because those individuals, those humans that are most drawn to emergence as a power, they are also going to be the ones that are going to endure all kinds of temptations. For instance, to sell out and to be part of the fame or the wealth or the prestige of the modern system, and or to move into cynicism and to abandon the work itself, because the transformation is going to be hard and difficult. There are going to be some fun moments. Some parts are going to be easy and fun and joyful. But right now, I just want to emphasize the fact that there's amazing struggle taking place, and people are dying, and species are dying, and so there's a way in which we have to find the strength to avoid being lulled into some kind of sleep, of materialism or whatever it might be. And this is why we need to reflect on the fact that the universe is at work in this work, in creative emergence. The universe is at work. The universe has always been at work about this. How is the universe supporting our efforts? Here's how. The universe has been aiming at vibrant life from the beginning. It's what the universe is about. I mean, this is what's so new in the sciences, that we can actually say the universe was somehow constructed and is constructing itself for life. It's thrilling. So that our work in creative emergence has the support of the universe if what we are involved with is leading to a vibrant Earth community. It will enable us to take the long view and the deep view and stay faithful to this work. The fourth suggestion to think about is this. Humans that are drawn into creativity and this path of emergence are restless. There's the same kind of restlessness that the universe has around this question of when are you going to be satisfied? The point here is this. The universe has shaped you to be restless. This isn't something to get over. It is this sense of something more. It is this sense of how the universe has the power to actually transcend its particular situation and to get to a better state. Even if there's never been a time in the past that we're working for, we have this conviction that we can actually be part of what will bring forth a new era of peace, well-being compared to our era. And so my suggestion is that we learn to cherish our restlessness, because we hope it will not cease. And I think of restlessness as your personal invitation from the universe to be involved with creative emergence. And I just want to end with a quotation from the anthropologist A.L. Kroeber. He captures this so beautifully. He says simply this. He's talking about humans in general, and of course I'm placing them now in the context of the universe. He's talking about humans in general, but really his comment goes to the universe as well. It's so wonderful. He says, the ideal state for the human is not exactly bovine placidity. It is rather the highest degree of tension that can be creatively born.